Here to remind people of the beating. No plaque, no sign, but people nonetheless remember what took place 25 years ago. What do you think when you see that video?
I believe that we just get treated like animals.
Many believe it was a landmark moment that changed race relations.
The age of video is upon us. You know, like I said, again, it will never be the same.
A quarter century later, people still remember.
How unfair that was.
Steve Futterman, CBS News, Lakeview Terrace, California.
Caught on video in Baltimore, a school police officer slapping and kicking a young man outside of school while another cop watches. The two have been put on unpaid leave during the investigation. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
Loan is a 30-year fixed rate loan with a 1-0
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Areas of rain mixing in with a little mountain snow briefly will move in from the west through the afternoon. High temperatures only to the lower to middle 40s as we head through the nighttime. Showers will head off to the east, lows upper 30s for Friday. Still cool but drier with more sunshine for the weekend. Try Little Caesars large hot and ready bacon wrap crust deep dish wrapped in over 3.5 feet of crispy bacon and hot and ready every day between 4 and 8 p.m. only at Little Caesars. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patriot Prepper. On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
So what are you getting ready for? What are you preparing for these days? There's a lot that's going out there. You may not be watching it. That's why I'm here, and I'm going to help you to get ready for whatever it is that might be coming down the pike. This is the Patriot Prepper Show. We're sponsored by P5 Preparedness, and let us help get you ready. Let us help you get ready for what's coming. It might be a financial collapse. It could be political turmoil. That's really what's in the news these days, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff that's going on. We got to get you ready. You got to have a plan. You got to figure out what it is that you're going to do. And like anything, you need to practice. This show airs every Thursday from 11 to noon on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And it's also on the TuneIn app. And you can also turn to the YouTube channel for Hot News Talk Radio. And you can see my ugly face on the screen live. I'm wearing my pretty Ole Miss hat today. I guess it's because it's going to rain in a little bit. I want to keep it off my glasses. I want to have a good day today. My name's Duke Nukem. I'm your host. I'm running solo today. Eric isn't here. So whatever goes wrong, if I screw up the buttons, if I go past my commercial breaks, blame Eric. Call the show. Tell him that, hey, Eric left Duke high and dry. But I think we're going to be okay. We're going to get through some stuff here. We're going to cover planning. To get through the planning part of it, you got to figure out why you need to plan now. There's, like I said, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going in the world. If you're focused on who's going to be president, at this point, I don't really think it matters. It could be Donald Trump. It could be Hillary. It could be a third party. Who knows? But that's what they want to do. They want us to keep our eye on that ball. It's like in football, when you run a fake or a triple option, you never know who's going to run the ball. I always like watching the triple option on the offense. They don't really run it in college or the pros, except maybe the Naval Academy or somebody like that. Some obscure teams that have a lot of speed, but not a lot of size. And it's a lot of misdirection. And that's what's going on. If you watch any of the mainstream TV shows, they're all mostly feel-good stories about things that really don't matter. I don't care about Kris Kardashian or Caitlyn Jenner. Those things don't matter to me. And they shouldn't matter to you. If that's what you're focused on, if you just watch the evening news, if you watch tonight's presidential debate, I'll probably watch it because I think it's interesting. But I hate to see those guys beating up on each other. And really what they're doing, they're keeping our focus off what's really important. So what is important? Well, we're going to get to that in a little bit. First, I want to cover some tidbits. I always like to do that, just some random things that relate to preparedness, some things that you can keep an eye on. If you've been listening to this channel, you've been hearing our advertisements. This is Severe Weather Awareness Week. It runs through March 5th. The special at P5 Preparedness is weather radios. These radios, they're $19.95. That's our cost. These are fantastic radios. They work off batteries, and you can also plug it into the wall. So that way, if the power goes out, you can still hear what's going on. Severe Weather Awareness Week is at the beginning of the season when we have severe weather. It could be tornadoes. It could be massive rainstorms and flooding. We don't know when those storms are coming, but we can get ready for them. And actually, this happens at March. March is a sort of a light time for the tornadoes. It's more the heavy rainstorms, but it starts ramping up to a peak in May. Well, that's really a great theme for overall preparedness. We know that May is the peak of tornadoes. That's when we have the most throughout the country, throughout the South, and even Hamilton County in Southeast Tennessee. This is one of the areas where we have more tornadoes in the state. We're above the state average for tornadoes in this area here, Southeast Tennessee. And so the idea is get ready ahead of time for when those storms are coming. And we know those storms are coming in 2 months, but also they could happen next month. It could happen in October or November. We had some pretty bad tornadoes later in the year, just a few years ago. I think it was 2012. They happened about 3 o'clock. There was no tornado warning. There were parents at Ottawa High School waiting outside as the tornado blew right across practically the back of the school parking lot there. No warnings given. They didn't know what was going on, but it was a tornado. It did a lot of damage up in the Snow Hill area back up there. So the idea here today in talking about planning is, for one thing, you have to anticipate what's coming. And so we hear bad economic numbers. And the one thing from an economic number that I like to look at is the Baltic Dry Index. And it's still continuing its slow climb up, which seems to be a good thing. The Baltic Dry Index rate is up to 335. That's up 11 points from last Thursday. That's a very slow climb. And anything below 500 is at a critical level. And so we're still well below that level. We've talked about fuel prices last week. You know, the fuel prices, while it seems to be good for the consumer, it is at the individual consumer rate because we're paying much less for gas. I have diesel that I put in my F-250, and I'm paying about $1.53 a gallon. I was paying nearly $5 a gallon for diesel about 6 years ago. So, wow, I can't complain at all about the price. But what's causing that price? Mostly it's economic warfare between the Middle East and Russia and the United States. If you look at what collapsed the Soviet Union, it was really the economic pressure that the United States put on the Soviets and causing them to put a ton of money, billions of dollars, into their military, which they couldn't afford to do anymore. They weren't getting the revenue from the oil. And so now if you look what's going on today, well, the Middle East is about on the brink of war again. There was a ceasefire a few days ago between Turkey, well, it was between Russian troops, the Russian-backed militias, and Turkish U.S.-backed militias. We don't know which side either of these militias are on, really on the ground. But the idea was that Russia had agreed to a ceasefire, but they also said that if anybody breaks that ceasefire, they would respond strongly, even possibly with tactical nuclear weapons. Well, Turkey is right in the middle of this. Turkey is a NATO member, and if there are nuclear weapons used in Syria, they will somehow drag Turkey into this, which drags NATO into this, which drags the U.S. into it. You've probably seen the news, maybe one tidbit here or there, where we're sending thousands of troops back to the Middle East, back to either Afghanistan or Iraq to recapture territories that we have already captured once and gave up. Some of it, like around Fallujah, we've captured a couple of times. A lot of our Marines died in Fallujah capturing territory that we've given back twice. And now we're sending more troops over there. We've got special operations forces that are searching for ISIS bigwigs over there. Well, we're trying to keep the war over there. So how does this all tie together? The point is that we're watching the elections, but there's a lot more other news. There's economic news out there that's bad, and there's foreign policy news that's bad. And again, you got to look for some other news sources. Maybe it's things that I like to read, like zerohedge.com or urbansurvival.com, shtfplan.com. Those are really good sites where you can get news that's pertinent, that can be verified through other sources, but you're not going to get that through the mainstream media. Economic news. I was talking earlier here to Russell, who's in the control room, and we were talking about the unemployment rate. Well, the real unemployment rate, if you go back to 1993, I believe, the way that we calculate the unemployment rate was changed. And so how did we change it? Well, we decided to quit counting people that were no longer looking for work. And so what do they call that? Really, what they call people no longer looking for work are those that have gone on unemployment and have been off benefits for more than 6 months. Right now, we've got over 95 million able-bodied Americans that are not able to find a good job. That's astounding. That is a huge number. But they don't count. If you look at the unemployment rate, I think it's around 5.8%. I just don't even focus on what the government tells us that number is. I look at the number of people who are out there who are not able to work. And if they're not working, they're not paying into Social Security. And so the way that the Social Security system works is that when I work and I pay into Social Security, I'm not paying my Social Security. I'm paying that of my father. My kids are supposed to pay for my Social Security. And so it's the generation ahead of me. Well, the baby boomers are the ones that are retiring now. I'm 48 years old. I'm at the kind of the apex of the next generation, Generation X, I guess. Well, there's 95 million of us that aren't working. So we're not paying into Social Security for those baby boomers. So what's going to happen to those folks? Well, they may run out of benefits. And what happens when I get to retirement age? Well, I have Social Security benefits. What about you? Have you thought that far ahead? My guess is probably no. I look at some of these stories about people planning ahead, and I am just absolutely astounded at what I hear. I heard on the news yesterday, and I can't remember if it was a local story. I think it was a regional story where a man's home had burned down. They had paid the house off. I think they built the house in the 80s. And so the house was paid off. The insurance rate got to be too high, so they didn't renew their homeowner's insurance policy. And so in December, they let their homeowner's insurance lapse. Well, their house just burned down. I'm just astounded. That to me, that's pretty stupid. Maybe it's short-sighted of me. Maybe there were other financial reasons why they couldn't afford to pay that extra amount for homeowners insurance. But in my opinion, that's not planning ahead. And so now what are those folks going to do? They're homeless. Well, there will probably be fundraisers for them. There will be, church fundraisers, neighborhood fundraisers. They can go to the Red Cross and get temporary shelter. They can get food from other people. But where's their plan? People were in car accidents. I saw another story on the news where a guy had his brand new car wrecked, but the car insurance won't cover the replacement value. Folks, we have really got to plan ahead. And planning is one of the things, that's one of the P's in P5 preparedness. Proper planning prevents poor preparedness. Wow, there are so many things that you need to do to be prepared for bad economic times. If you lose your job, and there's a lot of people that are losing their jobs or not able to get jobs, what do you do? I mean, are you just going to rely on other people? That's not much of a plan. Where's your savings? Have you thought about retirement? If you think right now, think back 20 years. 20 years ago, I was 28 years old. I had just moved to New York. And I think about my salary and what I did there and how old my kids were. I had one at that time. Now I have three. But if I think 20 years ahead of time, I'll be 68 years old. Well, I remember back 20 years or 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, like it was yesterday. But when I think ahead that far, that's in the future. I don't have to worry about that. Something will come up. Things will be fine. Well, you got to remember, folks, that we are not in charge of our economy. We may think that, we escaped the last recession in 2008, 2009. Well, that was because of something called quantitative easing. That's a fancy way of saying printing money. So think if you pay your kids with real dollars, and then all of a sudden you don't have any real dollars, but you say, hey, look, kids, here's some Monopoly money. Play with that. If you really actually need to spend that, I'll swap the Monopoly money out for you. I'll just give you credit. Well, that's what we do. But that's not much of a plan. When you think about planning, you have to go through everything in the plan. Well, how are you going to run your car? What if you don't have money for gas? How are you going to get around then? Are you going to borrow money? Are you going to borrow gas? Are you going to borrow a bike? How are you going to get to the store? Well, what if the store's closed? What if you don't have money to buy things at the store? Or what if the store only takes credit cards? What if your local neighbor only will take cash instead of a credit card or a check? You've got to think through these things. You have to have a plan for how are you going to pay for goods or services that you absolutely have to have. So when you think of a collapse, a government collapse or an economic collapse, there's going to be shortages. If you go back to Greece's economy collapsed in 2012, and there were people that were starting to go hungry. They had a shortage for bread. Look at what Venezuela is going through now. All of you may not remember too much about Venezuela, but you probably remember President Hugo Chavez was in charge of it a few years ago. Well, they're a communist country. They started taking over a lot of the economy, and their economy has gone in the dumps. 90% of their income is based on oil exports. And well, with the price of oil being so low, they can't get the necessities that they need. So they're having a bread shortage. Gosh, folks, we're not in charge of our economy. There are a lot of other factors out there that are dictating what happens in the United States and what happens to the United States. China is building islands out of sandbars over in the South China Sea. Well, that may not be any big deal to you, but those missiles can reach a lot of U.S. assets. That is something that has to be looked at as some sort of threat to us at the homeland, perhaps not a nuclear threat right away, although it could be that, but more of an economic threat. And so what are you doing? What are you putting back? What's your plan for food? How are you going to cook if you even have food to cook if the power goes out? And again, the power could go out from a thunderstorm, trees down. When we talk about economic collapse or things like this, we're talking about not the end of the world. We're probably not going to be back to a situation like in the book The Road or in the movie Mad Max Fury Road. Hopefully it doesn't get to that. It might just be the end of the world as we know it. It could be a regional issue. It could be from an ice storm. It could be from major tornado damage, a major failure to the power grid, a nuclear power plant that overheats. There's a lot of things that it could be the cause of. And so if you think about those type of things that you're going to need, how are you going to get them? How are you going to get those supplies at the last minute? If you ever watch South Florida or the Gulf Coast, when a hurricane is approaching, they wait for about 48 hours to make sure that the hurricane is coming their way. And then they rush out and they buy the plywood and they fight for the last bit of supplies that are on the shelves. Well, why not go ahead and get those supplies early? There's a good chance that there are areas that you can store those items ahead of time. If you think about what we do at P5 Preparedness, we help people with these kinds of plans. And you can come by the store. We're open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 7. We're on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. If you take exit 3A, we're about a half a mile up East Brainerd. And if you're coming from the interstate, you'll see our Army Deuce and a Half truck, big green truck, has P5 Preparedness signs out front. Come in there and talk to Keith or Seth or myself, and let us help you get a plan together. Come to our network meeting. Every Thursday night, we have a network meeting that's open to the public. It starts at 6:45, runs till about 9 o'clock. And we have a topic every week. And we have group discussion, but we also have current events. What's maybe happening in your life from a preparedness standpoint. We talk about what's going on in the world, what the threats are, how bad the situation is getting. We talk about crime in the local area. Check out some of our classes. This Saturday from 1 to 4, we have a class on, it's a home security, more like a home defense class. We call it bugging in. But if you don't have a plan to leave in an emergency, well, you dang better have a plan to bug in. And how are you going to keep people out of your house? If they get in, if you have a home invasion situation, are you able to get people out of the house? Well, that's what you're going to learn in this class on Saturday. So go to our website, p5preparedness.com, or call the store and sign up for that class. We have a bunch of other classes. Go to our website, go to facebook.com, and check out what we're doing there. You can really learn a lot of good things. So if you think about the things that you need to survive, where are you going to get those? Are you going to get those at some of the big box stores, the grocery store? Well, a lot of that stuff you can get there, but there are other specialty items, and the expertise that you're going to need to learn how to use some of those things, you're only going to get at P5 Preparedness. And when it gets down to those last days of, man, things are really getting bad, you got to remember that we've got our ear to the ground. We've got our ear, it's on the railroad tracks, and we can hear the train coming. We know it's coming. You have to be just, I don't know, an ostrich with your head buried in the sand to not know that there's something that's coming. The government's preparing for it. You know, the media is keeping our eyes, our focus off it, but something is coming. And I think you know it. So if you wait too late and you come to P5 Preparedness to get those last minute things, we may not be here. We may have already bugged out. You know, we're going to talk in the next segment. We're going to talk about bartering. We know how to do it. We know what's important. We barter today. You know, if you come in and you can't afford something, but you have a skill that is valuable to us, or if you have silver, those are things that we're willing to trade right now. The barter economy could be alive and well in your area. Those are things that you need to know. You have to have the things in advance of an emergency. You can't wait till the last minute. You know that the snowstorm is coming, but on the way home from work, you're going to stop off and get your French toast supplies, milk, eggs, and bread. Well, hey, if you're waiting to that last 11th hour, it's going to be too late for you, because you may buy stuff that you don't even know how to use. P5 Preparedness, P5, proper planning prevents poor preparedness. I almost wish we had worked another 6th P in there, which is practice. Those are things that you have to do. So we're going to look at bartering. We're going to look at the things that you can trade, or the skills that you can, like I said, trade. You can work out deals. But what you need, you know, you don't want to just stockpile alcohol and cigarettes and tobacco. While those are great things to leave on a shelf, those aren't things that you need in a disaster. So what are the things that you should stockpile? We're going to talk about that when we come back. This is Duke Nukem with the Patriot Prepper Show. Back in a minute.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Severe Weather Awareness Week, the 28th through the 5th. P5 Preparedness has weather radios only $19.95. At P5 Preparedness, weather radios are only $19.95 for a limited time only and a limited quantity. You need to get there now. Weather radios, $19.95.
P5 Preparedness on East Brainerd between Gun Barrel and I-75. Look for the Green Army truck, 423-602-2175. Look for us on Facebook.
Are you prepared for severe weather? February 28th through March 5th is Severe Weather Awareness Week in Tennessee. Do you have a severe weather plan? Do you know how to protect yourself from tornadoes? And most importantly, do you have a weather alert radio? Come to P5 Preparedness and let us help you get ready for severe weather or any other emergency. P5 Preparedness is located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the Green Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. You need to get prepared today. Don't wait until it's too late. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need or die waiting for help. P5preparedness.com.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell your home. In our area, inventory is at an all-time low, which translates into higher sales prices. Call us today at 423-499-7780 to set up a free consultation and discuss our unique and aggressive marketing programs. We will provide you with a free market analysis to determine the right value of your home. Call us today at 423-499-7780 or visit our website at sabrinarealty.com.
In the middle of our street.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A 71-year-old former city employee, Orlandis Metcalf, was killed in a drive-by shooting overnight. His wife was witness to the crime. She called 911. The police have not found the assailant. It happened at the 2600 block of Taylor Street. There was a report of a drive-by shooting with other witnesses as well. Police did find the victim inside of his home. According to a release, the shots were fired from a vehicle driving past the victim's home. The CPD is asking anyone with any information to call 423-698-2525. The investigation is still ongoing. More info will be released when it's available. And there's an update now on a story out of Appleton with a 3-year-old boy who was shot in the head. It appears now that he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The medical examiner believes that he was playing with a handgun inside of a car and shot himself accidentally. And a student at Central High School yesterday was taken into custody for bringing a BB gun onto school campus. The 16-year-old was taken into custody and taken to the Hamilton County Juvenile Detention Facility for a charge of possessing a weapon on school property. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Areas of rain mixing in with a little mountain snow briefly will move in from the west through the afternoon. High temperatures only to the lower to middle 40s as we head through the nighttime. Showers will head off to the east, lows upper 30s for Friday. Still cool but drier with more sunshine for the weekend. Try Little Caesar's large hot and ready bacon wrap crust deep dish wrapped in over 3.5 feet of crispy bacon and hot and ready every day between 4 and 8 p.m. only at Little Caesars. And I'm 1412 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Prepper. On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Nooganomics.com is a slap of fresh air, a 2x4 across the brain every morning. Read Nooganomics.com to find out what's happening in Chattanooga. Local-centric, Nooga-centric. Read it. The man who matters does. You should too. Nooganomics.com.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
In the first segment, we talked about some of the global events that are going on that can affect us. We don't pay attention to what's going on in Syria or Russia or with China. We're too focused on the election right now, which is fine. It's important to vote. But do you really not know what party you're going to vote for? At this point, I think you probably do. I think it's time that you turn your focus toward what's going on in the world, and especially what's going on in your life and how you can be prepared. And we're going to get to bartering in a second, but we talked about planning. And what's your plan? Well, how do you do that? First, you need to set some objectives. I covered this very quickly last week, and I want to run through it a little bit slower today. You need to have some objectives. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to have, I don't know, you want to survive for a weekend? Well, what are your plans for that? Do you have enough food if the power goes out? If you can't stay in your home, if a tornado's gone through the neighborhood and you don't have power and it's too cold or too hot for you to stay comfortably in your house, what's your plan? What are you going to do? So have you put money back for that to prepare for those kind of things? Have you put food back, shelter? Do you have a tent? Have you used that tent? Have you practiced any of your camping and cooking skills lately? Just because you did it 3 years ago and you haven't done it since, well, hey, maybe the bugs, the mice, the rats, the mold has gotten to your tent. And so when you need it, you're not going to have it. So write out your plan. List what you need in your plan from items and skills. If you don't know how to cook with a small propane stove or a camp stove, well, that's something that you need to practice. Maybe you only have one small bottle of fuel. Well, you have to get more. At P5 Preparedness, we tell you that you should have a multi-fuel stove and at least one fuel bottle that's full. 2 is better. You should always have 2 fuel bottles, so that way you can pick up fuel along the way of your journey should you have to bug out. But have you cooked with it? Have you used it? As an example, I have a jet boil stove that I used. The last time I used it was about 2 years ago. And the reason that was the last time I used it, because I thought I would try something. I would see if I could cook with the jet boil. Jet boil is very effective at 2 things. It's very effective at boiling water quickly. And it's also very effective at burning your food should you try to cook in it. Yeah, that was a lesson learned. I saw the warnings, hey, this is for water only, but you got to try stuff. Well, I tried it and my beef stew was terrible, but I learned from it. You got to practice these things and expect failure, but look at that as a lesson learned. It's not a bad thing to fail when you're practicing. That, every pro sports team there is, they practice. They come up with a game plan and they practice. They practice the new techniques, the new plays, the new equipment. You don't think they went out there with a brand new helmet without ever practicing in it or having tested it. So do your research. Get what you think you need. Come by P5 Preparedness and let us help you with the gear that you need. But practice using it. Don't take it out of the wrapper when you go on your first hike and figure out that your water filter leaks or that you don't know how to use a magnesium block with a ferrocerium rod to start your fires. Practice ahead of time. So list what you need and then start acquiring the gear and the skills that you need to have. If you've never taken a first aid class, at a minimum, you need to have first aid. You need to have first aid CPR training. That's the basics. That's the building blocks of any first aid class. If you don't have it, you're going to need it, because if it's not just you, it could be somebody else. A lot of the people that are bugging out are in no kind of physical shape. That's one thing that you need to work on. Make it a priority. Do some push-ups and sit-ups if you're able to. Talk to your doctor ahead of time before you get into an exercise program, but get into an exercise program. Figure out what your priorities are. If it's medication, if you're a type 2 diabetic, maybe it's just losing weight. It's getting off the couch and going and doing some things that can help you. That worked for me. I lost a lot of weight. I was a type 2 diabetic and I'm not now. I still monitor my blood sugar. It's good. I need to get in better shape, but I'm in better shape than I was before because I started. You have to start too. So set some goals. What are the goals that you need? I would plan on a little bit of a goal for an exercise program, getting some gear, and it needs to be good quality gear. You don't need $1,000 sleeping bag, but you don't need a $20 sleeping bag either. There's probably somewhere in the middle that will fit your needs. But you need to practice. You need to sleep in that sleeping bag. You need to practice getting out of it in the middle of the night in the dark. You need to practice keeping a fire going all night long. There's a lot of skills that you need, and you need to have plans. Write your plans down and then meet those plans. One of the plans that you should have for this year is to start a small garden. And the reason I say small, and if you're an experienced gardener, then you probably already are planning a larger garden. But many of us these days, we don't grow our own food. It's important to learn how to do that and expect failure the first time. But at least now you'll have a little bit of experience under your belt right now. This is early March. We're probably around the time of the final freeze. It could happen today or tomorrow. It could be in 2 weeks. I don't know. But we'll have a better idea. I think that the local news is putting out or maybe it's the National Weather Service is putting out their spring forecast today. And so that'll give you an idea of when would be a good time to plant. P5 Preparedness, we have heirloom seeds in stock. We have a good supply of them right now. They're going quickly. But you need to start. And why is a garden important? Why is growing your own food important? Well, those grocery stores may not be there when you need them. You may not be able to run out and get the fresh corn at the grocery store. So do you know how to grow corn? Do you know how long it takes? If you plant it in April, you're looking at August before you get it. But you need to have the practice of growing those things. Do you have the proper light, the proper water in your area? Are you going to use fertilizer? Do you have the right tools for a garden? Do you know what kind of animals are attracted by those flowers, those fruits, those vegetables that you've planted? So do you know what you're going to attract? Do you know what they're going to keep away? There are some plants that will attract one kind of animal, will chasing off others. Marigolds are very good at keeping bugs and critters away. But if you don't plant them in the right place, it might be a problem. If you have the same kind of plants, too many plants too close together, they may not germinate. You may not get the proper pollination. If you plant them too far apart, they may not mate. Plants do mate. You've got to get the pollen from one plant to another. So these are all things that you need to practice. You need to work on those kind of things. Do your research now. You know, we've got rain in the area today, but instead of spending 2 hours watching the debate tonight, have a garden book or look up on the internet, the web, find some resources on gardening and start doing that. It's important. And as I said, you may fail at this, but it's practice. Practice is key to whatever that you're going to do. So we're going to turn to bartering now. Why is bartering important? Bartering is very critical because there are things that you are going to need and you don't have. And there are things that you may have that you don't need. And other people will. But if you have planned properly, you're going to have some excess items in your larder that you're not using. And other people have done the same thing. You don't want to give your stuff away. You want to get something in return. If there are people in your group, it could be your family. I always use the term group because I guess I could use the term family, but family is larger than immediate family. There are people in my preparedness group that are not relatives, but they're more family to me than some of the people that I'm related to. And so they're in my group, they're in my family. And they're in there for a reason. They have skills. They have stuff. They have a mindset that is comparable to mine, that I can trust them in my relationship when it comes to preparedness. They'll help keep me alive and I'll help keep them alive. Well, you know, I have not put back a lot of things like alcohol or cigarettes or cigars. And there's a reason for that. Number one, that's not something that I use on a regular basis. And that's not something that is going to help me survive. Well, there are some medical uses for some of the alcohols that are out there for medicinal purposes, for pain-killing purposes, but not just to put back to have a shot every night. So if I'm spending a lot of money putting alcohol back, I'm not putting other items back. If you're extremely wealthy and it doesn't matter to you, then fine, put back whatever you want, but take care of the essentials. Get your beans and your rice and get your Mountain House pouches and your number 10 cans. Learn how to pack a 5-gallon pail of rice and beans. So that way you can put back even more because you're not having to buy it in that huge bucket. You're learning the skills to do it yourself. You can learn those skills at P5 Preparedness, by the way. We're offering pail packing classes on a regular basis. We also, if you don't have the time to learn how to do it, we have the large 5-gallon pails of food of wheat and rice and oats and low-fat milk, 5-gallon buckets, freeze-dried milk. Can't beat that. You have to have milk in your diet. So you have to figure out what it is that you want. You got to put back things that make sense. There are some things that a lot of people are going to need, and we're talking items now, something like fuel, gasoline, diesel fuel. You can put that back, but of course you're going to have to buy larger storage container for that. And then you also have to stabilize the fuel. And to do that, there's a group of products called PRI products. It's PRI, and it's PRI D as in dog, or better yet, PRI D as in diesel, and then PRI G as in gasoline. And P5 Preparedness is one of the few stores in Chattanooga that carries that. It was originally designed for the marine industry, and it's a fuel stabilizer and a preservative. So it's going to keep your fuel fresh longer. Gasoline with ethanol. Ethanol is the devil. You really don't want to put that in anything. And if you've put, if you've got that 40-to-1 or 50-to-1 fuel that you mix for your weed eater, your chainsaw, things like that, if you stored that over the winter months with ethanol-based fuel, you're going to have fun trying to start that. It's a chore. And so you can buy some things that'll clean out the ethanol, but those are fairly difficult to use. A lot of the small engine repair shops are going to love you because it's going to take them about 30 minutes of practice, but they've done this hundreds of times. But they'll get your small engine cleaned out. The same thing with your lawnmower. If you store it with ethanol fuel, you're probably gummed up in the carburetor and it's not going to start. Don't put it out by the curb to trash it. Just go get it fixed. About 20 or 30 bucks. But the point here is, what I'm saying is, don't store your long-term storage fuel if it has ethanol in it. Get 100% gasoline. And if you're going to use it for small engine use, probably go ahead and get the 93 octane. That's about the best that's on the market there. And you'll be in really good shape if you put that stuff back. People are always going to need that. Another barter item is, this is more on the skill side of things, but if you have solar panels and you have the ability to charge people's batteries, either AA, AAA, or even better yet, 12-volt car batteries, you're going to be a lot of people's friends. If you put back some items, like they make a 12-volt adapter that it's got one end that's got the cigarette lighter plug in your car where you can plug 12-volt items into it, and on the other end is alligator clips, which hook to your battery, your 2 battery terminals. Those are a great thing to have, because people are going to be able, they'll be able to plug things into that they might otherwise not to. You know, you don't always want to have to go out to the car to charge things off the battery when you can bring the battery in the house. You need proper ventilation if you're going to have batteries like that size in your house, by the way. So there are skills that you can have. Veggies, if you're growing things like that. If you're in the food production business, things like eggs and honey. Vegetables, if you have something for a farmer's market, or if you put back a ton of seeds. Seeds are something that you can use, but also you can give to other people. And you want to say if the heirloom seeds, non-GMO seeds, because you want them to be able to produce seeds. So if you grow a watermelon, you want to be able to get the seeds out of that watermelon, dry them out, and then replant them for next season and have them produce the same quantity of vegetable or fruit that you just harvested them from. And with heirloom seeds, those will do that year after year fairly regularly. If you're using non-GMO seeds, the GMO is genetically modified organism. That means that it's been, I would say, tampered with. The genetic makeup of that plant, of that seed, has been altered. And not all GMO seeds are bad. There's a lot of things that is actually good about them, because sometimes they'll breed in pesticides, natural pesticides. These are pesticide or insect resistant plants, or sometimes plants are susceptible to fungus or something like that, and so they adjust the genetics of these plants so that they're resistant to that fungus. And but when you're tampering with that, you don't know exactly what you're going to get down the road. And so GMO seeds have been found to be able to not produce the same amount of fruit that the parent did. And so there's a place in your storage for GMO seeds, but I wouldn't put your whole existence on those type of seeds. So we're talking about barter items and some of the things that you can put back. Matches are always good. Feminine items are good. A lot of people don't think of that. But the feminine items, especially things like the pads, they're super absorbent, and you can use those as wound coverings, as dressings, because they will cover and they will absorb a good amount of blood coming from a wound on your arm, your foot, your head, wherever. Those are, it's a multi-purpose item. Can openers is something that you could put back, even if it's the small handheld, the old GI style, either the P38 can opener or the larger P51. The P38 can opener is about the size of a quarter. We sell them for $1, and they're virtually indestructible. So those are a few of the items that you can put back. What about skills? We talked a little bit about the ability to charge batteries. And of course, you need a system to do that. But what other skills do you have that you can learn that would be good for an emergency, for a grid down situation? It could be something like making candles, or reloading ammunition. These are things that may take an investment up front, but it's a skill that would be fantastic to have. If you think about a large scale grid down power outage situation, one of the things that's not going to work is the plumbing. If you're on city water and the city sewer system, those pipes run in a series of networks that go to the waste disposal plants. We're in a fairly hilly area, so the waste is pumped from one area to another. If you kind of think of chutes and ladders, the old game, well, those pumps have to pump the sewage up the ladder rack, up the hill, and then it flows freely down to the next hill. Well, those lift stations, they have backup supplies. Most of them are diesel generators, but they have about a 500-gallon limit. Some of them are natural gas or propane, but they're also in a tank that's limited. Once it runs out, it's done. And so what happens to that sewage if it runs downhill and it can't be pumped uphill? Well, it leaches out of the system. Or if it's a really good closed system, most of them aren't, it will back up into the house. And then, so if you're closer to that lift station, you may have sewage in your house. So there are ways that you can block that up. A lot of times there's a cleaner pipe that's outside, and you can pour stuff down in there, sand or something, to keep that sewage from backing up. But hopefully it won't come to that. But the skill that I'm getting at is digging latrines. If you have a power auger and you have some gas put back for that, you might be able to dig latrines for people that really need that, because you can't go in the bathroom and just clog the toilet up if it's got nowhere to go. You're looking at a sanitation issue there. There are going to be a lot of skills. It might be cutting firewood for people, but you're not going to be able to do that all with a chainsaw. So that means you're going to use an axe or a crosscut saw. So do you have those items? Do you have saws and axes put back for a business like that? Do you have access to the land to cut those trees? It could be that you're cutting the trees down for the people that are, cutting them out of their yard. But, a lot of these manicured homes, they clear cut the property before they start planting the trees. So there are no trees of substantial size that could be used for firewood. So could you bring that firewood to them? Do you have the means of transporting firewood to these people and selling it? But hey, this is a cashless society now, or, we don't know if they're going to take dollars. So you're not taking dollars and you're not taking credit. So what are you going to take as a barter item? Well, you may exchange firewood for something of value to you. And if people were thinking that it's going to be, there's books and novels that have talked a lot about .22 ammunition being the alternate currency in a barter world. And it could be that. But if you've been looking for .22 ammo over the last several years, you know that there's quite a shortage of that. If you want to go out to the store and you try and buy ammo, you're limited to, 3 boxes or 300 rounds. Well, so that might not be the barter currency. But if you're talking with me, if I'm bringing that load of firewood to your house, we're going to have to work out some kind of deal. And it might be that, well, I don't need firewood. I don't need matches. I don't need maxi pads. But you have something else. You have a skill. Maybe you're a chiropractor and my back is killing me. Well, maybe that's the trade right there. So you may not necessarily have to go out, but I can tell you what, I was a human resources manager in manufacturing for 20 years before I became a full-time preparedness person. Human resources is not a skill that you really need in a disaster, in a grid down situation. Yeah, I can maybe talk some people out of, disputes. I can settle some disputes. But do you think in a grid down situation, neighbors are going to call neighbors to, if two neighbors are fighting, they're not going to call a third party in to settle that dispute honorably. They're probably going to do it the old fashioned way in a duel or a fist fight, or who knows. But point being, if you're just a business manager, you need to have some other kind of skill. And there's a lot of skills that you can learn that are valuable to other people. If you're in the medical profession, maybe that's teaching classes there. But really, you're going to have to be some sort of tinkerer. You're going to have to, maybe it's repairing small engines or farm equipment, or maybe it's, sharpening shovels and tools like that. You got to plan ahead. you have to think about these different kind of things. You can make candles, but candles take heat. You have to melt wax. You have to have wax. You have to have wicks. You have to have knowledge. You have to have practice and skill to do that. So there are a lot of things that you can do. Another one is filtering water. If you have a good system for picking up water, catching water, and filtering it, water is something people can't live without. So maybe they bring you 10 gallons of dirty water and you give them 5 gallons of clean water, something like that. There's a lot of things that you can do, but it's going to take a little bit of thinking and planning outside of the box. You've got to know ahead of time and get ready ahead of time. If you're going to the theater Friday night for some major play or the opera or somebody's graduation, you're not going to wait till Friday morning to see if your suit is clean. You're going to do it ahead of time. You're going to make sure that the suit fits. You'd hate to go to your son's wedding and realize that your suit doesn't fit. And so now, you've got to rush out and either try and buy a suit, buy khakis, whatever. You're going to make sure you have the right tie. Make sure you're wearing the dress, and you got to make sure your dress and matches. Again, it's something else that I get you to think that, as I said, we're not in charge of our government and our economy. Other third parties are. We have to get ready for what's coming. So let us at P5 Preparedness help you do that. Come visit us. It's 1309 Panorama Drive, Suite 115 in Chattanooga. The phone number is 423-602-2175. Email us at the store at info@p5preparedness.com. And that's the website, p5preparedness.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Let us help you get ready. Get ready to protect your family, to protect you, to help other people when things get bad, because I think it's coming. I don't think it's too far off. My name's Duke Nukem. This is the Patriot Prepper Show. We're on every Thursday right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Briefly will move in from the west through the afternoon. High temperatures only to the lower to middle 40s as we head through the nighttime. Showers will head off to the east, lows upper 30s for Friday. Still cool but drier with more sunshine for the weekend. Try Little Caesars large hot and ready bacon wrap crust deep dish wrapped in over 3.5 feet.